Hello and welcome back to another episode of Only a Bag, an Italy travel podcast. I'm Darcy Melton.
And I'm Nathaniel Malor.
And today we are going to be talking about what to expect in the airport before a flight, mostly because I just took a flight and I made a list of what I should have expected and should be expecting in the airport. And also, this is kind of a revisit of a couple of episodes we did a little over a year ago about airports and flights, and we have condensed it down just a little bit to revisit and have a couple of updates.
Yeah, we've also gotten a number of messages. Thank you all again for sending messages. And while it was not at all related to the messages they sent, a number of people mentioned in the messages that they would be coming to Italy soon. And so we figured, what a perfect time. People are still visiting, obviously, but people are still coming here. So we might as well have an episode about the changes, essentially, that have been made over the past year. There have been some fairly large changes. And I think next week, though, we are going to get into your airline rights, like your rights as a traveler on an airline, what you can and cannot expect, or what you can and cannot demand, I think, for lack of a better word, and especially in cases of maybe your flight was late or delayed or canceled or something like that, what you can and cannot ask for. But this week we're going to talk about the flight itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this episode, we're going to stick to basically in the airport, and then next episode, which will be coming out on Friday, we're going to be talking about on the flight, essentially.
Perfect.
So the first thing I want to talk about is small but important. So I got the basic economy on Delta because I was going by myself this time and I was only going to be staying for a week. So I brought a backpack and then a small carry-on bag. And that worked super well. And so whenever I was taking my flight back to Italy, no matter what, I couldn't choose my seats.
Sure.
But I didn't know going there what my seats were going to be. So anyways, I had like a middle seat both ways on my first leg and my second leg. And I wanted to see if I could get an aisle seat because I get nervous whenever I have to ask people to move. I feel bad. And I knew I was going to have to pee at some point during this flight.
Naturally, as one does.
As one does. So I was surprised to know that I didn't have to talk to a real person once I got to the airport in order to change my seat. I just went to the kiosk, as you always have to do, which I don't love, but it is what it is. So I went to the kiosk, and whenever I checked in with my passport, it gave me my boarding pass. And before that, I could change on the kiosk. I could change my seats for free. There was no fee to change my seats once I got to the airport, and I didn't have to talk to a person. So that's just something to keep in mind, that if you do get an economy seat, once you get to the airport, you may be able to change your seats, and you may be able to do it at the kiosk when you check in.
And this is something we've talked about, I think, a few times, and it's come up a number of times. I know that for a fact, that in the past, for those of you who have not flown in a while, I'm talking like 7 to 10 years, there was a time where if you got the economy-based tickets, there were some standard things. And one of them was a checked bag. And another thing was you couldn't necessarily choose where you were sitting, but you would be guaranteed that you'd be sitting with whoever you booked your ticket. Mm-hmm. So if you booked with 3 other people, you'd be sitting roughly loosely with those 3 other people, whether in the same row or at least across the aisle from them or something like that. I want to say Delta actually changed this. It might have been another airline, but I'm pretty sure it's Delta, or maybe it was a budget airline that then Delta was one of the first big airlines to pick this up. I say this because we also fly Delta because they're the ones, they come to Italy frequently and have a bunch of different options, and they use Airbus instead of Boeing, which has a nice safety record. And so we use Delta. However, I think they were the first to essentially tell you at the checkout page, like, if you get the economy ticket, there's no guarantee you're going to sit next to the person you booked with, which isn't like the end of the world. However, considering the fact that there isn't like a caveat for children and their parents, or for anything like I mean, elderly parents and their children, anything like that. It's just, if you're traveling with somebody who will need your help, they are essentially saying you have to pay money to ensure that you have the right sort of seat, if that makes sense. Like, you're sitting next to who you want to come with.
It felt like there was a time, I don't know if it's still going on, but there certainly felt like a time where intentionally the Delta algorithm or whatever it was separating couples, but also separating families with small children in order to force these families to pay extra to buy their specific seats, which makes no sense because you should always be able to sit for free with your children, especially under 18-year-old children.
But it's also, I think, and I mean, this is maybe coming from a mindset of buses and trains, like trains here, for example, in Italy, you don't have to, I mean, you're guaranteed, like if you and I book together, almost always we are given two seats together, especially, let me rephrase this. We're always given two seats together. However, the few times we've traveled business class, where it's a different setup, instead of four seats and four seats across the aisle, it's two seats and then four seats across the aisle. So it's essentially, if it's like a couple versus if it's a family of four, I assume is how it's done, but it's business class. So I'm not sure a business meeting is happening in
Yeah.
that
I think
area.
they expect people to have business meetings on the train on their way to another city.
That's kind of it. Like, so if it's a two of you traveling to another city versus four of you, and no, it makes sense though, because it's always the two of us put together. But then when we went, you're with your mom or my brother and my dad, we were put together in our own little group always. And even if it wasn't like, even if they're like, unfortunately, there are no four seats together, I think we were put across the aisle from the two of them. So, which is all simply to say that we come from a place right now, I think, with the trains that you're always going to be sitting next to somebody. You don't have to worry about like choosing your seat. For a plane to be like, yeah, if you're traveling with like your 8-year-old kid, you got to pay us $200. Otherwise, you're not going to sit with them. And it's also kind of like, who wants? I mean, respectfully, who wants to take like a transatlantic trip, sitting next to someone else's kid?
It's weird.
Who like their parent is down the aisle and has to
Exactly.
keep
Like
coming
I
back.
love kids, but it's not my responsibility to take care of this kid, and they don't want to be with a
I
stranger.
was gonna say for an 8-hour trip, that's a big thing too.
Yeah, that's weird for everybody.
So this is simply to say, like, if you are somebody who does choose the basic economy tickets, they have changed in recent years. And again, the checked bag is not the end of the world, because obviously this is now the day and age of like gate checked bags, or is it still gate checked? Is that what it's called, right? Like
Yeah.
the pink tag bags.
You still have to have a bag that is technically a
Sure,
carry-on. You
sure.
can't just, hack it by bringing a large bag up to the gate. They won't let you do that.
Yeah, but if you have like a roller bag that still fits within the carry-on parameters, they will almost always check it for you. So, which is just easier for if it's a heavy bag or something like that. It makes it so much nicer to just kind of have it under the plane and not worry about it. But unfortunately, yeah, the economy ticket, if you're planning on your trip in the economy ticket, it's a bit of a shame, like just in terms of that. However, I will say if you are like wanting to see Italy on a budget, or if you're traveling by yourself and you're not really concerned about where you're sitting and you're like, I'm spending money on the hotels, I'm spending money on food. I don't really care how I'm getting there. I don't really care how I'm getting back. I'm going to be asleep most of the time anyway. Then honestly, the economy ticket is the way to go. And they're often between $500 and $600 for Delta, usually a little cheap with American. So it's not bad for a round trip ticket, for well under $1,000 to come to Italy and back if you just want to take a vacation.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we were saying off mic earlier, there are certain things that have certainly gotten worse with airlines, like not getting the checked bag and not being able to sit with your family unless you pay a fee. But I feel that, I mean, with seatback entertainment and with the fact that most international flights have pretty decent snack, beverage, and food service, you're not getting nothing. I mean,
Sure, sure.
my flight was pretty decent, and I got very lucky with my seatmates. Everybody was very nice and quiet and polite and wonderful. So it wasn't the worst
Yeah,
flying
no,
economy.
exactly. I mean, I think the few times I've flown by myself, for lack of a better, which is rather than with you, I mean, like just by myself, it's not the end of the world. I mean, it's an uncomfortable 8 hours sometimes, but it's
Yes.
not like, awful necessarily. It's just like, yeah, we're gonna pretend this other person does not exist, sort of, unless you need to get past them to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And I also want to say, just now that we're 8 minutes in, thank you to everybody who has been leaving reviews. That's right, we're sneaking this in at the 8 minute mark. Thank you everyone who has been leaving us reviews. We genuinely appreciate it. And for those of you who have been following us as well on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, and for those of you sending us messages, we appreciate it. We love hearing from y'all. We love responding to them, feeling useful. Of course, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything you want to hear on the podcast, we every once in a while we'll talk about doing like a listener episode or whatever, listener stories, listener questions, something like that, like some sort of engagement. If that's something that you want to see or hear, then absolutely let us know. But with that being said, if you'd like to leave a review, you can do so on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. And if you'd like to follow along, you can do so there as well. And thank you all again so much for listening.
Did you mention onlybag.com?
We also have a website called onlybag.com where there are articles and you can send us messages there.
Exactly. And thank you so much to everybody. We really appreciate you being here. So let's now talk about security.
Ooh, everyone's favorite part of the flight.
So basically, security, it's not a fun time. It is what it is. You do your best. Everybody's doing their best. So I just want to kind of put up ahead of time. So whenever you check in, you're going to need your passport. If let's go with international flights, right? If you're domestic flight, you only need your real ID driver's license if you're in the U.S. So, but for international flights, you need your passport, and then you'll get your boarding pass. From every step onward, essentially, when you're talking to someone official, you will
Yeah.
need your passport and your boarding pass. So when you go through security, both of those things. When you go up to the gate, you need both of those things. Eventually, when you go through customs in the next country, you will need both of those things, your passport and your boarding pass.
That's really important. I will, if I may, though, even just kind of jump on. Don't put your passport away. I think we notice a lot of times that people will put it away in their back or like in a safe pocket, which is not necessarily an easily reachable pocket.
Yeah.
It does also throw like put into play airline clothes, for lack of a better term. Where I mean, I like my favorite clothes for a while were like these pair of pants that had a it's sort of like a hip hop pocket, a side pocket. It wasn't like a cargo pant. It was one of those ones with the zippers along the seam. So it was a little bit, it wasn't supposed to be hidden. It was just supposed to be subtle. And it was perfect for the passport because it was hard to reach for somebody who's like going to pickpocket me or something. But it was also really easy for me to reach. And it was also kind of hidden. So it was harder to find the zipper, et cetera, which is all simply to say that consider that when you're dressing for the airport. Whilst comfortable clothes is super important, I think, for the flight, also just making sure your passport's always like reachable because you're gonna, as you mentioned, need it for every step of the way, including but not limited to getting on the plane. I think a lot of people, I mean, a couple of years ago, you wouldn't necessarily need it getting on the plane. I don't recall having to show it to anybody like in 2015, 2014.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I think I don't know if it's a recent thing where they because also they don't scan it. They just look at it to make sure it matches the name on the ticket. So I don't know if they had some sort of thing where like people are going through security and then swapping their ticket to somebody else and being like, because once
Yeah.
you're through in theory until you land. So I don't know if there's some sort of thing happening, but they just check the name. And obviously now there's like a line that you have to go through. Like a lot of the airlines will set it up, especially the transatlantic ones. They'll have like this almost like you get in line and the line's like 15 feet away from where you actually get your ticket scanned, and that's where they start going through your passports ahead of time.
Ah,
So they kind of break it up a little bit. But which is, I'll say, don't put away your passport once you're through the security.
yeah. So I was using Nathaniel's REI backpack, which was great. I'm going to get one for myself because it has a really convenient pocket that I can essentially reach without having to take the backpack off necessarily. I can reach this pocket on the side, but it's in a place so I could stick my passport in there if I needed to like go to the bathroom or go get snacks. I wasn't holding on to it the entire time I was walking around the airport, but I did want to have it there for easy access.
Sure,
So
yeah.
that was super helpful. So when you're at security, you put on a happy face and be as polite as possible if you're Darcy.
And you don't make jokes. It's
No.
not a joking place.
I know, I'm so awkward. Sorry, quick aside, y'all. So I got pulled aside once I got to flying from Italy to Atlanta because I think I was a single person, obviously traveling alone. I had a backpack and a carry-on, so I didn't have to stop for my bags. I think I just looked suspicious because I was breezing through the airport and I got pulled aside for extra security. And I made some joke. I don't know what I said, but as soon as I said it to somebody who was official working at the airport, I was like, Darcy, don't say stuff like that. You're so awkward. And like, that was not, don't say things like that to people at the airport because it was something like, I look so suspicious. I don't know. Be on your best behavior.
Yeah, don't tell somebody you look suspicious. I feel like that's a really solid one.
But
I look suspicious. I would like to sign up for extra screening, please. So
I
maybe
didn't
don't
know
do
what to
that.
say. And he was very nice, this person. Anyways, it was all fine. So when you're at the security, you checked in, you go to security, you have your passport out and your boarding pass. So you go by somebody, they check all your stuff, they say, get in a line. So you're going to want to look for, there are different kinds of x-ray machines. What are they called?
Yeah, like
The
I think X-ray machines. So the ones that they scan your bag, like you put your stuff in the little crate. No, that's not a crate.
bin.
But bin. Thank you. Grab a bin. They put in the bin, and yeah. So X-ray machine.
So there are different kinds now. There's the kind of regular standard small one, and then there's a larger one, which is kind of dark blue and gray. It essentially looks like an MRI machine to me.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
it says Smith detection. That's the one you want to go for if there's room in that line and if you're allowed to do that. Because with those, you do not have to take out any electronic devices. You just leave your laptop, your tablet, whatever it is, in your bag and put everything in a bin, and you're good to go. Super, super easy.
I was gonna
Also,
say that one's huge, especially if you're in a rush, or especially if you are with like a group, like not with a group of people, but oftentimes we're in line and they're kind of people don't realize that there's a difference. They're just like, I'll take any of them. And you and I are like, no, no, no. We need the one that is like, you don't take things out of your bag. You don't take out the
Mm-hmm.
camera or the phone or whatever. I mean, everything goes in. It's also the one that they encourage you to put everything out of your pockets and into the bag itself. Like they
Right.
like take out your phone, take out your wallet, take out your keys, put it into the bag
Mm-hmm.
itself because it'll all get scanned and it'll go through. I'm assuming it's slightly different, but quite similar sort of X-ray. I'm like, I can't imagine. I don't know what internal devices it has basically, but it's not like it's more dangerous, I don't think, for computers or anything. It also, I only mention this because I know that like with film and stuff, those are things you're, not that people necessarily still use it, but I know there's a resurgence of film photography. So
Is there a problem with film going through an X-ray machine?
yeah, you're not supposed to put film through an X-ray machine because
I
it'll
didn't
develop
know
it.
that.
Yeah,
It will develop it?
something like that. Yeah, it's like there's a little
Wow.
sign, and weirdly actually, of all airports, the one in Bangor, Maine, which is a very tiny airport and very much not at all. I mean, almost like a bus station. It has a
Yeah.
really cute
It's
bus
very cute
station
though.
vibe,
Yeah.
but it's almost like a bus station that was not prepared for TSA because there's nowhere for TSA really to go. It's just very, yeah,
But they
clearly,
had strict security.
well, they did, but it was almost like they were like kind of, I can imagine they were struggling to figure out where to put the
Yes.
machines. And they still have signs all over the place. It says, if you have film, let us know. We'll examine it by hand so it doesn't go through the X-ray machine.
Wow. That's cool. I didn't know that.
And it's still fascinating. There are still things like that. I don't know if there's anything in a laptop or a digital camera or anything like that that is affected. The only thing that seems to change is the Smith detection is just super quick to get through. They want everything together. You don't take anything out. And we haven't noticed that nobody else seems to, and I guess it's like really few times you fly a year, nobody else seems to have caught on to the fact that the Smith detection is the line you want to be in if you're in a rush. So it tends to go much, much quicker. And it tends to have not to be like, it doesn't have like a necessarily a massive, massive line.
Mm-hmm.
However, we've noticed whether it's in JFK or Savannah where we fly out of, there's usually only one or two.
Yeah.
It's like I think Savannah has one, I think JFK has a few, but like Bangor, Maine, bringing that one back up, zero, which is fine because it's about six people going through security at
Yeah.
any given time. I don't think Portland had any, Maine as well, but I think also did they have any in Naples that you noticed?
I don't know. Security was so simple and fast in Naples.
Did you
I
go back
can't
through security
remember.
in Atlanta?
No.
Interesting. And see, that's something I also wanted to talk about, which I'm getting completely off your agenda, and I apologize. Is I think it's something people ask us, not necessarily as part of Only a Bag, just as, Nathaniel and Darcy, their friends, where they have to go through passport control and where they have to go through security. And it's genuinely like every single time we've flown, it's been something
It's
different.
so inconsistent. So this time I didn't, and the Savannah airport has recently revamped their whole security thing. There's like a whole new wing with extra security stuff. And I assumed this time that because they had beefed up security, that I didn't have to go through it in Atlanta, but it wasn't in essence any different than what we used to do. So it can't be that. And I'm wondering if it depends on which gate you fly into. Like if you have to move from a domestic to an international gate or something, maybe you have to move through a different security. I don't know.
Well,
It
and that's what
doesn't
I
seem
was,
to make any sense.
and that's what I was curious because last time I flew, which was last year, when I landed in, I think I was with you because we landed in Atlanta and we switched in Atlanta, I believe. Somewhere that might have been somewhere else, but I thought it was Atlanta. We had to go through security because
Hmm.
TSA is more strict than Europe. I don't know what European security is called. Sorry, guys. But I think here there's no laptops coming out. There's no shoes coming off. No belts. I think you go through like the X-ray machine, but I don't even know. Do the little swirly ones, those little like cylinders? I think
No, I think going through Naples, there was no swirly one. It was just a regular
X-ray, not X-ray,
metal
excuse me, metal
detector.
detector. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's so much more relaxed here. And so that being said, if you're flying around, I bring this up specifically for those of you who are Americans, I should say, because I imagine if you're English or European or probably Australian, already have a different security system. If you're American and you're coming here, let's say you're going to spend a few days in France or spend a few days in Germany and fly down to Italy, don't go ahead and start taking things off and putting things, because they're going to be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
And we're going to get to something in a second, which is a recent like sort of national policy change in the U.S. But it seems to me like every airport, and also depending on how big the rush is at the security at the time, or who the team is on TSA, sometimes they have different rules. Sometimes they make
Mm-hmm.
you take off stuff that they don't in other places. It's it's not, it's like, it feels so unstandardized sometimes.
Which is, if I may, so I think like something to assume is you will have to go through security when you get to the airport in your home airport, and you probably will not have to go through another batch of security in your connecting airport because usually a lot of flights, unless you live near a hub, unless you live near or you're flying out of Atlanta, JFK, Newark, Philadelphia, Boston, major hubs, you're going to have to connect somewhere probably, and you if you go through security in your home airport, you should not have to go through in your connecting airport. You will have to go through passport control there, or no? Did you not?
No, I didn't have to do anything in the in between flight. I only had to go through passport. Oh wait, let me think.
Passport control once you landed in
I
Naples.
believe so.
So it could be like now they've made it so all of that has to be done. Because I remember again last time I flew, it felt like I had to go through like I had to, because I was going into the area. Well, I guess that's not true. I take it back because I flew out of Charlotte last time, and they were just like, yeah, like the flight going to England is right next to flight going to Duluth, and it was just like there's no difference between the two. And of course, when I landed in England, I had to go through customs and passport control and stuff like that, but not in Charlotte. So it was everything was done in Savannah, and then I landed in Charlotte, did nothing. Landed in England, went through passport control, went back to passport control, left England. That was a terrible 48 hours. And so I do think so. If you, for those of you wondering, like where do we have to be prepared for what, I do think it's mostly just like you mentioned, passport, boarding pass, leaving your home airport, get to your connecting airport, still hang on to your passport and boarding pass. You still need that to get on your flight, but you don't need to get it checked. You land in, I assume, Italy, but let's say you land somewhere else in Europe, for example, Italy. You need to go through passport control and then, but no more security. You don't have to go like, no one's checking your bags. They're just going to ask, I think, if you brought anything, but there's no security. It's just passport control. You get the little stamp and you're through. You're good to go. Going back is always different. I believe something I've noticed is Naples and Rome and Venice, I guess most airports have a USA specific area
Yes.
versus a other international flights. And I think you go through an additional bit of security in those airports before flying to the States. And I'm wondering if that's why you didn't go through additional security in Atlanta. Because when I went through,
Sorry, I should clarify. I was thinking of whenever on my flight from Italy to Savannah, I did go through not. I went through a small amount of additional security, but I
okay,
believe that's because I was pulled aside. I had to go through extra security.
but you went through the X-ray detectors and
I
the,
went through a regular metal detector, and then my bag went through a sort of standard
okay.
X-ray.
Was it other people or was it just you?
It was it was me and a couple other people who got pulled
Oh,
aside.
okay. So maybe for like that, the SSSS, the chosen for secondary screening
And then I
something.
got pulled a second time. I kept getting pulled for extra security coming through Atlanta from Italy. But then whenever I went my return flight coming from the States to Italy, I didn't have to do anything in Atlanta.
Wild.
I know. Again, it's my thing is it's kind of a toss up. You got to roll with the punches, and hopefully, whenever you're booking a ticket, where you have a leg in between or two, try to book it that you have more than like 35 or 45 minutes. Often, when I'm coming from Savannah, they try to only give me 45 minutes in Atlanta, but that makes me nervous. In case something goes wrong, in case you get pulled aside for extra security, I just feel like you never know where you're going to have to go through security.
Yeah. No, no, for sure.
That's
For
my
sure.
opinion. So, something that has changed recently, like July 8th, right?
Fifth, I think.
5th,
Yeah.
you apparently no longer have to take off your shoes going through security in the US.
Which is, for those of you not from the US, we have had to take off our shoes, I believe, since 2006. I think there was an attempted bombing in 2001 of an airplane, and I think it was until 2006 they made it a law that you had to remove your shoes. There's attempted airplane shoe bombing, I should clarify, not regular bombing. Point is, I think it was 2006 they made a law that you had to take off your shoes, and that was up until now, so almost 20 years. However, the reason I wanted to mention this is because a huge draw point, a huge selling point, there we go, of TSA pre-check, of the clear check, whatever that one's called, of all these get through the lines quicker, where the two major things was, one, you don't have to take your laptop out, and two, you don't have to take off your shoes. But between the Smith detection, where you already don't have to take your laptop off, your laptop out, and this new you don't have to take off your shoes in TSA anymore. To me, it seems like the TSA pre-check is kind of not that interesting, especially because, again, if I may, It's only for the United States. Obviously, there's no TSA in Europe. So it only works in the United States. It's not global entry, which is what works in theory through the globe, which I mean, I think it only works in like 100 something countries. And the last couple of times I've flown, the TSA pre-check line has been longer than the normal security line. And I get like the idea is like, oh, but it'll go quicker. Even though there's more people, it'll still go quicker. And it wasn't going quicker because they were all going through one person versus the regular people were going through two or three TSA agents. And while they were obviously trying to like make it so these TSA pre-check people were sometimes going to the regular agents, they weren't being prioritized. So it kind of feels like if you don't have TSA pre-check, but it's something you're considering, maybe reconsider it. Maybe figure out what else is necessary. I think you and I often consider it because we're like, oh, it could make it kind of easier, but now with these changes, not really. Plus, a fairly large selling point of the Chase Sapphire Reward Card, which is like a gold standard of travel cards, was the fact that it would reimburse you for this TSA pre-check or global entry. It's like a $95 value over 5 years because I think these are good for 5 years. So again, with it being less useful, it might make people rethink also the card. I mean, the card has other benefits. It's an $800 a year card. It should have other benefits, but
Good Lord.
I know. But that was one of the, or maybe $500 a year, but it's still one of the major benefits was we'll reimburse your TSA pre-check. So it's just if you're considering it or if you're up for renewal, I think your mom had it for a while and because she was traveling all the time. So it's like if she's up for renewal, it's like, not really. It doesn't really do anything anymore. So this is just simply to say, keep those shoes on.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison.
Also, last note on that though, while it was a nationwide law, it started in like one airport in Kentucky or something like that, and slowly, I had to when I was looking it up, it was like as I was looking up the most recent airports to adopt that was like I think Philadelphia and JFK and a few others. I don't know if it has anything to do with how like airports are privately owned, so in theory they can have their own security. I have no idea. So I'm like, I assumed it was like for everybody, but in the article they mentioned how it was not being rolled out everywhere. I'm like, how is it? It's not taking off your shoes. How's that not being rolled out? So I also don't know if there are certain airports don't have the full body scanner, but I thought that was standard because even again, Bangor, Maine had a full body scanner. So I assume certain things are standard. So I don't really know which way that goes, but
Interesting.
simply to say you can ask obviously at the airport.
Yeah, I will say, like, I feel like I'm used to people shouting, the TSA agents shouting out what you're supposed to be taking out because they're
Yeah.
probably so tired of having to tell people what they're supposed to be doing.
JFK is the best for this. I've never heard people sound so tired and so annoyed in my life, and
But
it's
then,
amazing.
quick aside to that, conversely, one time we were going through JFK and it was swamped. And if you've been through JFK, like
I
international
think it's Terminal
security,
4.
it's always it's always just chaos. But this was extra chaotic, and the TSA agents were shouting, "Keep everything in your bag, keep your shoes on." This was a few years ago. They were like, "Move as quickly as possible," and I was like, "This is really bad, y'all.
I know. I love
This
that.
is
There's no more security. Just
yeah,
go.
like,
Just go to
we
your flight.
don't care. Just get to your flights, essentially." So that was wild.
Which is also kind of, though, it really, I think, made you and I both go like, oh, so is the security just like here for flavor?
It's just it felt like it was just for show at a certain
Yeah.
point, yeah, which is unfortunate. So a quick note I want to talk about. We talked about this on some previous recent episodes, but I just want to reiterate, if you haven't heard those episodes, that it is by law you have to do this, but a lot of people don't realize it. Whenever you have prescriptions that you're bringing internationally to, I think all of the EU, but maybe yeah,
I believe all the EU,
I believe
yes.
all of the EU. You need to have a filled out form signed by your doctor about what those prescriptions are and the dosage. You don't need that for vitamins or melatonin or ibuprofen, anything like that. You do need it for prescriptions. So we're going to put in the description of this episode a link to the Ministry of Health website in Italy where you can get that form to fill out for Italy.
And if I may, I think we've mentioned this sort of to people who've asked, but anecdotally, we've heard from people who have forgotten or just didn't know it was a thing, that they both were not caught, or those who were, it wasn't a big deal. It's just, we mention this because we might as well tell you all the information rather than just leaving out weird pieces of information for no reason. However, if you make a mistake, or if something was prescribed to you and you have it, but then you no longer, that's not like your doctor anymore, or something like that. I get there's a lot of kind of situations and cases where things can change. I totally understand that. So if
Don't panic.
exactly, don't panic,
Yes.
essentially. So yeah, that would be, but we'll put that in the description.
Absolutely. And I think maybe the last thing that I want to touch on in this
Yeah.
episode is it's Esta or Estes, which is
Yes,
changing.
yes. That we've talked about this so many times because it keeps coming up and then disappearing. It will happen. It will happen, y'all. It is the ESTA, I think is what it's called for Europeans, ESTAS for Americans. I don't know I don't know. But essentially for a while now, for a couple of years now, like a decade, Europeans have had to get essentially a visa ahead of time to visit the United States. It's like 10 euros. It's good for a couple of years, 3 or 4 years, 5 years, something like that. And it's not hard. They can get at the airport. It's not hard. It's just
Oh, you don't have to get it ahead of
you
time.
don't. You should.
Okay.
They recommend that you should.
Okay.
But you don't have to. There are places at the airport that you can get one day of,
But
and
it's not as easy as Americans coming to
literally just landing
Europe.
and getting
Yeah,
the stamp.
exactly.
And that is changing for Americans. It's part of I don't know what the initiative specifically. I think it has to do. I mean, mainly has to do with tracking information. If we're being
Okay.
100% honest, it's because they're also doing away with the passport control agents. So the people who stamp your passport will no longer be there. You will no longer get a stamp in your passport. What you do is you'll scan the passport. It'll make a little note that you've come into the country. You'll have a picture taken of your face, and then you leave. And then when you leave Europe, same thing, I believe, so that it charts when you come in and when you come out with your face, so you can't again pass your passport to somebody else, or I don't know, yeah. And it also means that we've mentioned this, I think, in some of the episodes. We've also mentioned this on in articles. But it used to be, and this is for a very small percentage of you, for those of you wanting to overstay your visa in a pretty underhanded way, it was a thing where you could come to Europe, lose your passport. I'm putting air quotes around that if that wasn't evident from my tone of voice. And then when the the consulate's like, okay, when did you come in? You're like, I don't know, I don't have the ticket. I think it must have been something like September 8th, September. You just give them a fake date, of a month ago or whatever it was. And they're like, great, okay, we'll put that stamp in your temporary passport, or your not even temporary, just your new passport that you just bought for $150. And then now you've got an extra 2 months of stay time in Italy. This is huge, especially in like the 80s and 90s. People were telling me like, oh yeah, that's how you stay, especially if you go out of nobody cared if you leave like Greece, Spain, Italy, Portugal. They're like, no one would even look at your passport. Even, I mean, to be fair, the amount of times when we first came here in 2015 out of Naples, I'm not sure they even looked at the passport.
Yeah.
They were just deep in a conversation with their buddy, stamping the passport, go ahead. And then I'm like, oh, so you don't care when I got here. Now it's obviously changing. So even if you lose the passport, they keep your date of when you arrived in the country. They keep a picture of your face of when you arrived in the country. So it's all changing. Mostly, I believe it's partly as just to, I think, track tourism or something. And other things. Europe is weirdly, for such a privacy-oriented sort of group of countries, they're also really big on tracking people.
I will say, somewhat on that note, I'd like to do more research about this and possibly talk about it next week. But many, 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 many airports now, between at the gate and going through security and going through customs, have facial recognition now, where you have to stand in front of a camera that is very bad at reading your face, and it takes a million years, and then finally you can move on with your day. You can opt out of that. I don't know what that process is. So I'd like to look that up and talk about it next week. But I just do want to let people know, if you haven't flown in a while, or even if you have and you just haven't happened to see these, there's a lot of facial recognition that you are required to do, unless you tell the gate agent or whoever it is that you're interacting with that you would like to opt out of that, and they will take you to a different area.
I should add that is thank you for bringing that, because that is what they are when they take a photo of you. It's the facial recognition scanner.
Right, exactly.
So
and you're supposed to be able to legally opt out of that. So now that they're enforcing this Estes thing, where that is all wrapped into that. I don't know what that means.
Yeah. I know. I mean, the idea is it's supposed to make it also a lot smoother of a transition. I mean, I don't know if it
And
really
it
will,
doesn't.
but yeah.
In the Rome airport, I won't tell you
It's a
all the horror
nightmare.
stories. It's always a nightmare. They have so many banks of these little stalls that you have to go through, where you scan your passport and then you make it to the inside of the stall, and then you do the facial recognition, and then you talk to a real person. It takes so long, and the machines break all the time. It's a mess.
Yeah. So with that fun, happy note, we're gonna say thank you all so much for listening. And
Thanks
then
for
in the
listening.
next episode, we're gonna be talking about basically continuing, but more on the plane.
Yes, we're going to continue just a tad in the airport, and then we'll move onto the plane.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for listening, and we hope you will join us for the next episode.
Talk to you on Friday. Tanti abbracci.